Chapter 12. Barcelona, Spain, August 4th. All day the sun had been so hot that the air had stagnated over the city. As night fell, a breeze kicked up, carrying the spicy sense of cooking across the city. Somewhere, down the streets of Barcelona, music played loudly, drifting up to the small, heavily shuttered villa that Spike and Drusilla had appropriated from its owners several days earlier. The aging couple who owned the place lay dead in a second-floor bedroom, and the heat from the previous days had caused them to decay quickly. Of course, the vampires did not need to breathe in, to smell the stench of the rotting corpses, but sometimes one or the other would forget. The worse the smell became, the more it reminded them that they had been in Barcelona too long. They had searched the city from the Gothic quarter to the Barceloneta, the harbour neighbourhood where the fishermen lived. From their villa in the shadow of the fortress of Montjuic, they had spent each night slipping through the city in search of the girl. She had not been at the address noted for her on the list, and no one had seen any sign of her or her watcher. Spike stood in front of the villa and watched the night come alive in the city to the north. He was greatly troubled. The girl in Louisiana had escaped them, but not before the little bitch had set the torch to Drew. The girl could not realize it, but if she had simply let Drusilla burn instead of tossing her out the window, where she could roll in the dirt until she put the flames out, his baby might have died that night. Drew's flesh had healed in just a few days, of course, but she had seemed off since, distant and unreadable, and this lurking around Spain was not helping a bit. Spike knew what would do the trick, though. The American girl was not really to blame. It was that slayer, Sophie. He was certain that they would meet again, and when they did, Spike would make the girl suffer, make her scream. Scrimer had instructed them not to kill the slayer until he sent word that they were to do so, but old Frosty never said they could not torture the girl. "That'll be just the thing," he whispered to himself, nodding. He searched his pockets for cigarettes, and then remembered that he was out. Even as he cursed the luck of it, he heard the door open, and Drusilla floated up beside him, and laid her head on his shoulder. Her fingers traced the line of his jaw, then moved around to twirl in the hair on the back of his head. "My poor Spike, you're so tense," she whispered. Drusilla leaned in to nibble at his ear, but Spike barely responded. "She's not here, is she, Drew?" he asked. "Isabel Cortez is gone." "Had a dream today," Drusilla replied quite matter-of-factly. "A city full of Bengal tigers, and all of them were hungry." Spike nodded. "That's what I thought. I'd like to think it's coincidence, but I'm afraid those self-important proofs at the council may have actually taken some action here." Drusilla pulled him around to face her. His chin was tucked down so that she gazed up at him. Her eyes were clearer than they had been since Louisiana, perhaps long before that. "I want my necklace. I want to feel its power on my flesh, hear it whisper the secrets of the old world and old gods. I want to see my face, Spike, and any other face that my whimsy gives me. Freya's strand belongs to me. I deserve it." Spike nodded slowly, a grave expression on his face. "And you'll have it, pet. It's only a matter of time and persistence, and we've an endless supply of both. We'll find the little lambs we can, then go back and see Skrymir. I don't fancy another walk up that mountain before we have to. This is his plan. If it goes bollocks up, that's his fault, not ours. Now then, where would you like to go next?" Drusilla made a trilling noise in her throat, a small smile on her face. "What about Prague?" Spike shuddered. "I've been sort of putting off Prague. Rather not go back there until we have to." "Hong Kong?" With a frown, Spike glanced down upon the city again. "I don't know, Drew. It's a hell of a trip, isn't it? Wouldn't mind so much if we could be sure the girl would be there. But after this, I think we'd best concentrate on the Continental lasses and then report in." "Mykonos? The sands are lovely." "Right, then," Spike said happily. "Greece it is." London, England, August 7th. The pristine blue sky was tarnished only by chalky traces of cloud that seemed so forgotten and haphazard they might have been left behind by an absent-minded god. A breeze rippled the surface of the lake in St. James Park, urging on a toy boat carved of wood. From a nearby bench, Sophie watched the little boy who must have been the boat's skipper chasing after it along the shore of the lake, crying out in glee at the boat's progress and terror that he might never get the vessel back. Beside him, a large man with a handlebar mustache grumbled as he took off his shoes and cuffed his pants, preparing to wade in after the boat. Sophie watched in silent amazement. The lovers had set out picnic lunches on blankets scattered across the park. A pair of giggling children played with a dog nearby under the watchful gaze of their mother. The heat of previous days had abated for the moment, and the weather was nothing short of perfect. A crystalline day, worth preserving forever, and Sophie marveled to find that those around her seemed actually to believe it could be done, that by some miracle the day could go on forever, could be encased in amber or frozen in time. The war lingered, threatening far worse than any approaching storm. Her own war, and the lives of those slayers in waiting yet to be brought to London, weighed heavily upon her, so much so that she felt in some way a black spot upon the otherwise unsullied perfection of the day, as if she might infect those around her with her terrible knowledge. It was illusion, of course. They knew at least enough about their own ward to know the beauty of the day. The carefree hours they would spend in the park that day was fleeting at best. Yet they went on as if these were the only moments that mattered. Sophie watched the grumpy man with the handlebar mustache splash into the lake, soaking himself up past the knees, and a new thought occurred to her. An impossible thought to a girl who had been raised to war as she had. Maybe they are, she thought. Perhaps this, all of this, is the only bit that really does matter. The man with the handlebar mustache shook his head in exasperation and laughed as he waded back to shore, rescued boat in his rough hands, to be greeted by his cheering son. Sophie found herself laughing softly at the picture they made, but slowly the smile drained from her face. All this was possible for them, but not for her. The duties of the chosen one prevented such carefree moments. It was her obligation to keep the darkness at bay for no other real reason than so that lovers could picnic and fathers play with their sons in the green grass of St. James Park, and not think about the horrors that lurked just out of sight, waiting for an opportunity to strike. She could not protect them from the Nazis, but she could keep the monsters at bay. Thus she sat alone, a stone's throw from Buckingham Palace, and waited for Yenna to return from her meeting with the council. It had been made clear, and quite firmly, that her presence was not required at that meeting. Sophie was more relieved than offended. Though she had enjoyed Eleanor's company on their voyage from America, she needed to clear her head. The park had afforded her the opportunity she had sought, but now that her head was clear, the thoughts that began to fill were even more morose than ever. Her worst fears about Yenna had proven true. Not perhaps the madness some seers were prone to, but certainly a slow separation from reality. How else to explain her inability to act when Spike threatened her? The Watcher's visions had so polluted her waking mind that it infringed upon her rationality. Yenna had a chance to kill Spike, and failed. All the more reason for Sophie to stay away from the council headquarters. She had carefully weighed her duties, knew that it was incumbent upon her to report her Watcher's condition, and purposely decided not to do so. Yenna was ill. Her mind was not right. But Sophie would not abandon her to the council. Yenna might no longer be able to engage in combat or to lead, but she was a brilliant woman with an extensive knowledge of the creatures of the dark. Sophie would keep Yenna with her, as an advisor, and also watch out for the one person in her life she could think of as family. Yenna had failed her, but Sophie could not hate her for it. She could only mourn what they both had lost, and pray that now the conflict with Spike, which had prompted so many visions, had come and gone, Yenna's mind would not deteriorate any further. Sophie! The Slayer looked up to see Yenna hurrying toward her along one of the paths through the park. In dynamic contrast to the way in which Sophie had allowed herself to relax, Yenna seemed wound up more tightly than ever, her braids severe, her clothing drab and functional, almost as though it were a reaction to her recent loss of control. Even as she thought, Sophie realized it must be true. Yenna's expression, as she approached, betrayed the anxiety she obviously felt. With a tiny smile of affection and concern for her mentor balanced by trepidation, Sophie unfolded herself from her perch on the bench, pushed her long blonde hair away from her face, and moved to meet Yenna along the path. Was it as bad as all that? She asked her watcher. Yenna came to a halt in front of her. She seemed about to say something, then paused. No, it was as I expected. Sophie glanced away. The words sounded hollow, but she could not imagine what reason Yenna would have for lying to her. After a momentary pause to compose herself, she regarded her watcher steadily. What now? She asked, the transition of leadership in their relationship still eminently clear. If I am to understand things correctly, all but the most distant candidates on that list have been retrieved, and are either here in London already, or on their way. Yenna nodded. The candidates in Moscow and Hong Kong have been informed that they are to be on alert until further notice. The council believes that Spike and Drusilla will attempt to complete their extermination of candidates in Europe before venturing so far afield. But all the others are here now, Sophie reasoned, though I suppose it would take some time for them to realize that. Not all, Yenna explained. Sophie frowned. Somewhere nearby she heard a child laugh loudly, but it did not draw her attention any more powerfully than the songs of birds in the trees above her head. Council operatives spotted vampires in Barcelona. Of those remaining on the stolen list, the nearest would be in Greece. The candidate there has yet to be informed of the danger. Why? Sophie asked. Then a horrible idea played at the back of her mind, and a wave of nausea swept through her. Please tell me the council hasn't left her out there on purpose, as bait. Nothing of the sort, Yenna protested, scandalized. The girl's family insisted she remain on Mykonos, the island of her birth, for training. Her watcher apparently convinced them to allow their daughter to go to Athens with him for several weeks to study certain texts and journals the council preferred he not take to the island with him. She has not returned, and their precise whereabouts are unknown. It seems our friends Mr. Haversham and Mr. Ruby have been dispatched to Mykonos to retrieve the girl the moment she returns to her home. If Spike and Drusilla don't find her first, Sophie said grimly. Then she regarded Yenna levelly, and put voice to the question that gnawed at her. If that was the purpose of your meeting, why couldn't I attend? Yenna blinked, taken aback by the question. She vacillated for a moment, absently rubbing her neck where Spike had bitten her, drunk of her. Sophie caught her gaze and held it. What is it, Yenna? Why would they exclude me? With all we are going through now, this is hardly a time for there to be more secrets between us. For a moment, Yenna looked almost angry. Sophie understood. They had quite purposefully avoided discussing what had happened on the train back in America. Yenna's hesitation to kill Spike had almost cost them all their lives. It was obvious to Sophie that even that had not cured the woman of her dangerous fascination with the vampire, nor of the dementia that had overcome her. Sophie wanted to bring an end to things quickly, to give Yenna's mind a chance to heal. Yenna was far from insane, nor was she fully engaged with the world around her any longer. It was a dangerous state, and made them both more vulnerable. But Sophie refused to abandon Yenna now, when her former mentor needed her most. Yenna, she prodded, please? I have not had any visions of him since the last I told you about, Yenna insisted. I keep no secrets. I swear to you that I will not fail you, or the council, again. Sophie took Yenna's hand, grief in her soul. I trust you. I need to trust you, she said, pained by the raw truth of it. All the more reason for you not to keep anything from me now. It's only to save your heart, Yenna said quickly, the secret crumbling within her. The council can be blunt and hurtful, cold and uncaring, but in this instance they were protecting you. The headquarters has made guests at the moment, Sophie. Eleanor is only one of the potential candidates residing there now. They hope to avoid any discomfort for you by keeping away from these girls who might one day take your place. Sophie swallowed. A chill ran through her as she found that her head had begun to ache ever so slightly. Do you think my shell is so brittle? She asked. It isn't. The Slayer held up a hand to interrupt her. It's all right. I understand. She took a long breath. At length she regarded Yenna again. And what of us? What next? Yenna studied the Slayer's eyes, reached out and laid a hand upon her shoulder. We go hunting again. We'll start in Mykonos. The vampires will have no way of knowing if we have removed the candidate there or not. Sophie considered that a moment. Greece makes most sense for them now, but it isn't as though logic has ruled them thus far. What if Greece is not their destination? Operatives have been set in place to observe the other locations from which candidates have already been removed. We will find them, Sophie, however long it takes. Sophie nodded. Each lost in her own contemplation, they walked along the path and out of St. James's Park. In front of Buckingham Palace, the guard stood stiff and unresponsive as ever. It occurred to Slayer that those men in their tall black furred caps and bright red tunics were lifeless as corpses, with only their upright position indicating that they were alive at all. It was an errant thought, ricocheting through her mind and out again almost too quickly to register, but it made her shiver just the same. Despite Yenna's confidence, Sophie suspected that once the vampires realized that the candidates had been recalled, they would disappear forever into the darkness. If the slaughter of theirs was whim, it could end just as suddenly as it had begun. They could very well get away with it. No, she vowed to herself. No, they will not. Not after all they had done. Then, to her disgust, she realized a terrible truth about herself. Though the very idea of it repulsed her, and though Yenna had vowed that it had not been the council's plan to do so, Sophie had indeed begun to think of the girl on the island of Mykonos as a perfect lure set out to trap these animals. Intentionally or not, the girl was bait. Mykonos, Greece, August 15th. On a hill overlooking a fishing village of cottages, the sun had bleached as white as the bone-hued sand of the shores of Mykonos. There sat a small house as pale as the rest, only a bit larger. Paradise, many would have said of that island, but to the people of Mykonos it was only home. In that small house, as sunlight spread long shadows across the island in the waning afternoon, Spike and Drusilla lay naked together on a mat on the floor, breathing heavy, more from habit than from the exertion of their love-making. They lay on their sides, facing each other, and Spike ran a hand along the contours of his beautiful love's porcelain flesh, still cold in spite of the heat. With a mischievous grin, he traced the bloody wounds on her breast and belly that he had given her. There was one on the soft underside of her left breast that had made her giggle with pleasure, and he cherished the echo of that sound in his head. For his own part, Spike would not be able to lay down on his back for the rest of the day, perhaps the night as well. Drew had torn deep furrows from his shoulders down to the small of his back, and Spike had screamed with the pain of it, and simultaneously lost control of himself. They were more spent, more content as lovers, than they had been for quite some time. It was this damnable quest that had distracted them so much, Spike knew, but he would not voice those thoughts to Drew. It was for her, after all. She would have Freya's strand, whatever it took. She wanted simply to be playful, of course, to wear different faces, and as a weapon against their enemies, wherever and whenever they might present themselves. Being able to look like anyone was a valuable bit of magic. But she also wanted simply to see her face, to remember what she looked like. It was perhaps the most lucid desire she had expressed to him in some time, and he could not blame her. Her beauty was exotic and magnificent, and it was one of the curses of their existence that she could not see it. Spike loved Drusilla with his whole self. He might tear her flesh, bruise her tender body, but only when it was what she desired. which she craved as part of their lovemaking. Her eyes and mind saw reality unlike that which everyone else could see, but that was one of the things that made him worship her so fully. She drifted, often, in a state akin to trance, but Spike chose to think of it as enchantment. Drusilla was his baby, his mad, fearless girl, and he cherished her. Every drop of blood he spilled was for her as much as it was to feed his own hunger. "You are a wonder, Drew," he told her, admiring the whole of her. "You made me sing," she told him. "Did you hear? The song was all through me, all thunder and strings. Did you hear?" "Oh, yeah. How could I not?" With the heat of the day warming them, even through the walls and ceilings, they lay there for what seemed hours. Spike felt himself begin to drift off and might have even fallen asleep for some time, though he could never be sure. When the door crashed open, ripped half off its hinges, the light streamed in and burned his back. Spike grunted with the pain, rolled out of the way of the splash of sun, and leaped to his feet. Drusilla was already up, crouched cat-like, ready to defend herself. In the open doorway stood a tall man in black pants and a white shirt. A fellow Englishman by the look of him. He held a crossbow and pulled the trigger even as Spike's eyes adjusted to the light. The bolt shot across the room, straight for Spike's heart, but the man had given him too much warning. Spike dodged. "Your counsel, I expect," Spike said. "Ken Haversham, at your service. Though I didn't expect to find you Starkers," the man said pompously. Spike hated pompous, particularly men who were trying to kill him. "You didn't expect to find us at all, you stupid git. You got lucky's all." "I'll say. Glad I got a chance to have a look at her before we march you out into the sun," Haversham replied, gesturing towards Drew with a knowing grin. Spike snarled, his features shifting to those of the vampire without his even realizing it. "Enjoy the view then, old man. But we're not marching anywhere. You think we didn't know you'd be coming? That once the nice old couple that owned this place didn't show up in town a few days, it wouldn't draw attention? We've been waiting on you, see?" "Like hell," Haversham snapped, but it was obvious Spike's words had an effect on him. He stood in the sunlight, safe from them, as he knocked another bolt into his crossbow. "Can I get the toy?" Drusilla asked, a little girl pleading for a pony. "Can I?" "By all means," Spike said. Drew padded deeper into the house into a bedroom where they usually slept. Spike heard a splintering of wood and a crash, and turned quickly to glance down the short hall. When he turned back, Haversham was already firing at him again. The crossbow bolt cut through the air, and it was too late to dodge. Without thinking, Spike whipped a hand up to block it, and the bolt punched through his palm and out the back, grinding against the tiny bones of his hand. "Son of a bitch!" he shouted. He turned to Haversham, eyes blazing, and moved toward the man. "That hurt!" "That sound in the back," Haversham began, arrogant as ever, "that was my partner, Mr. Ruby. By now your little succubus is nothing but—" "I found it," Drusilla called sweetly from the back room. "You were saying?" Spike asked. Haversham faltered, mouth open slightly. Drusilla pranced out into the front room, holding her prize by the hair. It dangled there, encrusted with dried gore. "Ruby?" Haversham asked, fairly choking on the word. "Are you blind, Gov? Your partner's dead enough, I'd wager. But that ain't him. Take a better look." Spike circled around to one side of the door, even as Drusilla held up the disembodied head. Haversham seemed to waver, to sway the way Drusilla so often did. "It's her, isn't it?" he murmured. "The girl, Valerie?" "We're way ahead of you, Ken," Drusilla cooed. "But don't be a little baby about it, all right? You're going to get a consolation prize." As she said this, she let the head dangle beside her, and she posed for him, seductive and sweet and extraordinary. Haversham shuddered, but could not keep his eyes off her. Spike roared as he dove sidelong across the patch of light thrown by the shower door, tackling Haversham and driving him into shadow. They tumbled together on the floor, and the councilman shouted in defiance. He scrabbled behind him and pulled out a stake he'd secreted away there, and Spike broke his arm for his trouble, the stake clattering to the floor. Haversham screamed. Spike stood up, leaving him there to stalk the floor a moment. Drusilla lingered near the door, though out of the light, to be certain the man did not attempt to escape. With a snarl, Spike stood over him again. "I've burnt my arse, thanks to you," he growled, lips curled back to reveal his fangs. Haversham whimpered. I don't understand," he whined. "If you'd already killed her, why did you stay?" "We needed a bit of a vacation, didn't we?" Spike asked idly. He turned to Drew. "Poodle, hurt him." With a sweet smile she knelt by Haversham, draped her body across his, and dragged her silken hair across his face. As she performed that sensual act, she sunk her fangs in the soft flesh of his cheek, and tore. Haversham screamed again. Drusilla withdrew. Spike crouched beside the broken and bleeding man. His face reverted to his human appearance, and smiled quite amiably. "Now, Ken," he said, You are going to tell us which of the slayers in waiting have been taken back to London, and which are still wandering about. When you've told us what we want to know, we'll kill you. Until you do, well, we won't let you die, no matter how much you beg.